The unexpected greeting commander, Sarah Chen, stood in the observation deck of the UES Perseverance, watching the stars shimmer through the reinforced transparent aluminum windows. At 35 years old, she had spent half her life in space, but the sight of distant suns still filled her with wonder. Today, however, those same stars were being blocked by something far more ominous. The space around Earth's outer defense perimeter began to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as massive tears opened in the fabric of space-time. Through these dimensional rifts poured the largest alien fleet humanity had ever encountered. Ship after ship emerged from the swirling vortexes of hyperspace, each one massive and bristling with weapons that could turn planets into cosmic dust. Sarah counted the vessels as they appeared, her expression remaining calm despite the overwhelming odds. 500 Valdorian Empire warships now filled the space that had been empty just minutes before. Each ship was at least 4 times larger than humanity's biggest dreadnought, and their hulls gleamed with the dark metal that the Valdorians were famous for throughout the galaxy. These were not exploration vessels or merchant ships. These were instruments of conquest, designed for one purpose: to crush any resistance and claim new territories for the ever-expanding empire. The bridge crew around Sarah worked with quiet efficiency, their training taking over even in the face of such overwhelming force. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, the communications officer, looked up from his console with concern etched across his young face. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. It's being broadcast on all frequencies and in 17 different languages." Sarah nodded and activated the main viewing screen. The image that appeared was both impressive and intimidating. Emperor Thrax of the Valdorian Empire stood nearly 8 feet tall, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. His skin was deep purple with silver markings that indicated his royal status, and his 6 eyes glowed with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship stretched out like a metallic cathedral, filled with alien crew members who moved with military precision. Primitive humans of the 3rd planet, Thrax's voice boomed through the translation systems, carrying the weight of absolute authority. "I am Emperor Thrax, ruler of 700 star systems and conqueror of 43 species. Your pathetic civilization has expanded into space that belongs to the Valdorian Empire. You have established colonies on 12 worlds that we now claim as our own." The Emperor paused, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. "You will immediately evacuate all human settlements beyond your home system. Your military vessels will surrender themselves to Imperial forces. Your government will submit to Valdorian rule and provide tribute as determined by our colonial administrators. You have exactly 1 planetary rotation to comply with these demands, or we will demonstrate why resistance to the Empire is futile." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence except for the gentle humming of the ship's systems. Sarah looked around at her crew, noting the mixture of fear and determination in their eyes. These were good people, trained professionals, who had volunteered to defend humanity's interests in the dangerous frontier of space. They deserved a commander who could guide them through this crisis with wisdom and courage. Instead of ordering battle, stations, or beginning evacuation procedures, Sarah did something that surprised everyone present. She smiled. Not a nervous smile or a brave facade, but a genuine expression of warmth and interest, as if she had just encountered something fascinating rather than terrifying. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," she said in a cheerful voice that seemed completely inappropriate. For the situation, please send a response to Emperor Thrax. Thank him for his message and tell him that we would be honored to discuss the situation with him in person. Ask if he would be willing to meet at a neutral location so we can better understand each other's positions. The communications officer stared at his commander for a moment, clearly wondering if the stress of the situation had affected her judgment. Commander, are you certain? They have 500 ships, and we have 35. Perhaps we should contact Earth Command for reinforcements or begin preparing our defenses. Sarah's smile never wavered as she turned to address her entire bridge crew. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to remember the Beijing protocols that we studied during our advanced diplomacy training. Sometimes the best defense is making the other side curious about what you're planning. Prepare for diplomatic negotiations, but also activate Protocol Omega and notify all ships in the fleet to stand by for potential implementation. The mention of Protocol Omega caused a subtle change in the crew's demeanor. Everyone on the bridge knew what it meant, though few people outside of senior command had ever seen it implemented. It was humanity's ultimate contingency plan, developed after the near disaster with the Krillian Dominion 5 years earlier. The exact details were classified at the highest levels, but every officer in the fleet knew that it represented humanity's most powerful defensive capability. Captain Elena Vasquez, commanding the destroyer U.S. Defiance, appeared on the secondary communication screen. Her weathered face showed the kind of confidence that came from surviving 3 different alien encounters over the past decade. Admiral Chen, the Valdorians are positioning their fleet in a classic encirclement pattern. They're trying to cut off any possibility of retreat while demonstrating their overwhelming superiority. Sarah nodded, still maintaining her calm expression. That's exactly what we expected, Captain. Please ensure that all ships maintain their current positions and continue standard defensive protocols. Do not power up weapons, systems, or take any action that could be interpreted as aggressive. We want our new neighbors to feel welcome in human space. The absurdity of referring to an invading alien armada as neighbors was not lost on the bridge crew, but they had learned to trust their commander's unconventional approach to crisis management. Sarah had earned her position through a combination of tactical brilliance and diplomatic innovation that had resolved several previous conflicts without bloodshed. On the main screen, the Valdorian fleet continued its deployment, spreading out in a formation designed to surround the much smaller human force. It was a textbook military maneuver that had probably worked against countless other species throughout the Empire's long history of conquest. The aliens were clearly experienced in the art of intimidation and had refined their techniques over centuries of successful campaigns. Dr. James Park, the fleet's senior biologist and cultural specialist, approached Sarah with a tablet containing preliminary analysis of the Valdorian transmission. Commander, I've been reviewing their language patterns and behavioral indicators. The Valdorians appear to be a highly militaristic society with a strict hierarchical structure. Their historical records, which we obtained from traders in the Centauri system, indicate that they have never encountered significant resistance from any species they have chosen to conquer. Sarah accepted the tablet and quickly reviewed the information. That's very interesting. Dr. Park, what does their historical experience tell us about how they might react to unexpected responses to their standard intimidation tactics? The scientist adjusted his glasses and pulled up additional data. Most species they encounter either surrender immediately or attempt futile military resistance. The Valdorians have developed very efficient protocols for both scenarios. What they have never Encountered is a species that responds to their threats with curiosity and invitation to dialogue. Excellent, Sarah said, handing back the tablet. Then we have the advantage of operating outside their experience and expectations. Sometimes the best strategy is to do something that the enemy hasn't planned for. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his console with a puzzled expression. Commander, we're receiving another transmission from the Valdorian flagship. Emperor Thrax wants to know if we understood his demands correctly. He seems confused by our response. Sarah laughed, a sound that seemed to lighten the tension on the bridge. Tell the Emperor that we understood his message perfectly and that we appreciate his directness. Confirm that we would still like to meet with him face to face to discuss the situation. Suggests that we construct a temporary meeting facility at the asteroid designated as Marker 7, which is approximately halfway between our fleets. The communications officer sent the message and waited for a response. When it came, Emperor Thrax appeared on the screen again. But his expression had changed from confident dominance to puzzled suspicion. Human Commander, your response is ... unusual. Are you attempting some form of deception or delay tactic? My fleet is fully capable of destroying your ships without negotiation. Sarah stepped forward so that her image would be clearly visible. To the alien Emperor, Your Majesty, I have no doubt about your fleet's capabilities. However, I believe that destroying us would be a waste of potential for both our species. We have much to offer each other, and violence would prevent us from exploring those possibilities. The Valdorian leader's 6 eyes focused intently on Sarah's face, as if he was trying to read some hidden meaning in her expression. You speak of potential and possibilities when faced with conquest. Either you are remarkably brave or remarkably foolish, Human Commander. Perhaps a little of both, Sarah replied with that same warm smile. But I prefer to think of myself as optimistic. Will you accept our invitation to meet? Emperor Thrax was silent for several long moments, consulting with advisors who remained off camera. Finally, he nodded slowly. Very well, human. We will meet at your suggested coordinates. But understand that any attempt at treachery will result in the immediate annihilation of your entire fleet. Understood completely, Sarah said. We look forward to our conversation. As the transmission ended, the bridge crew exchanged glances that mixed admiration with concern. They had seen their commander handle difficult situations before, but never anything quite like this. The fate of human colonies across dozens of star systems now depended on a diplomatic meeting with aliens who had never failed to conquer their intended targets. Captain Vasquez reappeared on the communication screen. Admiral de Val are beginning construction of a meeting facility at the designated coordinates. Our sensors indicate it will be a basic diplomatic station with life support suitable for both species. Sarah nodded and turned to address her senior staff. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to participate in what may be the most important diplomatic encounter in human history. Dr. Park, I want you to prepare detailed briefings on everything we know about Valdorian culture and psychology. Lieutenant. Commander Walsh, please review our files on the Krillian incident and ensure that all relevant protocols are ready for implementation if needed. As her crew dispersed to prepare for the meeting, Sarah remained at the observation window, looking out at the massive alien fleet that surrounded her small force. Each Valdorian ship represented centuries of military engineering and the accumulated power of a galactic empire that had never known defeat. Yet she felt no fear. only a curious excitement about what the next few hours would bring in the distance. Construction robots from both fleets were already beginning work on the temporary meeting station. Soon, she would sit across from an alien emperor and attempt to find a solution that would allow both species to coexist peacefully. It was exactly the kind of challenge that had drawn her to a career in space diplomacy, and she intended to approach it with the same combination of careful preparation and intuitive insight that had served her well in the past. The smile never left her face. The smile that changed everything. The temporary diplomatic station hung in space like a small metal island between two vastly different fleets. Sarah Chen watched through the shuttle's viewports as they approached the hastily constructed facility, noting how the Valdorian engineering contrasted sharply with human design philosophy, where human construction emphasized efficiency and adaptability. The alien station displayed the kind of imposing grandeur that spoke of a species accustomed to intimidating others through sheer presence. Sarah's diplomatic team consisted of Dr. Park, whose expertise in xenobiology would be crucial for understanding Valdorian behavior, and Commander Rebecca Torres, a veteran intelligence officer whose ability to read between the lines had prevented several conflicts in the past. As their shuttle docked with the station, Sarah reviewed her strategy one final time. Everything depended on presenting humanity as confident but not aggressive, capable but not threatening, until the moment came to reveal just how capable they truly were. The station's interior was a blend of human and Valdorian environmental requirements, with gravity set to a compromise level that would be comfortable for both species. The meeting room itself was simple but elegant, containing a circular table that symbolized equality rather than the hierarchical arrangements that Valdorians typically preferred. It was a small psychological advantage, but Sarah had learned that small advantages often determined the outcome of major negotiations. Emperor Thrax arrived with a retinue of 6 advisors and guards, their purple and silver uniforms marking them as members of the imperial elite. The Emperor himself was even more imposing in person than he had appeared on the communication screens. His 4 arms moved with practiced authority, and his 6 eyes seemed to take in every detail of the room and its occupants simultaneously. Human, Commander Thrax said as he took his seat, his voice carrying the weight of absolute power. I confess that your response to our demands has been most unusual. In 700 years of conquest, no species has ever requested a diplomatic meeting when faced with imperial ultimatum. Sarah smiled and gestured for her team to be seated. Your Majesty, perhaps that's because most species haven't had the benefit of learning from previous mistakes. We humans have a saying, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We prefer to learn from the experiences of others whenever possible. One of the Valdorian advisors, distinguished by additional silver markings on his uniform, leaned forward with interest. You speak of learning from others' mistakes. What mistakes do you refer to, human? Dr. Park opened his tablet and displayed a holographic star chart above the table. 5 years ago, we encountered a species called the Krillian Dominion. They were remarkably similar to your empire in many ways. Advanced technology, superior numbers, and an unbroken record of military conquest stretching back centuries. Emperor Thrax's eyes focused intently on the display. I am familiar with the Krillians. They controlled 47 star systems before they mysteriously vanished from galactic affairs. Our intelligence services were never able to determine what caused their sudden disappearance. Sarah's smile took on a different quality, still warm but with an underlying edge that suggested depths not yet revealed. That's because the Krillians encountered something they had never faced before. A species that had learned to turn superior numbers into a disadvantage rather than an advantage. Commander Torres activated her own holographic display, showing the tactical situation during the Krillian encounter. The Dominion sent 800 ships to demand our surrender. Like you, they were confident that their overwhelming force would guarantee quick victory. Like you, they had never encountered a species that responded to their threats with invitation to dialogue. The Valdorian Emperor leaned back in his chair, his forearms folding in a gesture that Dr. Park had identified as indicating deep thought and growing concern. And what became of these 800 ships? Sarah's expression became more serious, though her smile never completely disappeared. They discovered that humans have a very different approach to defensive warfare than most species. Instead of trying to match superior firepower with superior firepower, we prefer to find ways to make superior firepower irrelevant. Dr. Park manipulated his holographic display to show technical schematics that were complex enough to look impressive, but simplified enough to be understood by non. Every starship in known space uses some variation of quantum containment technology for their primary power systems. It's a universal constant, as reliable as gravity or the speed of light. What most species don't realize is that quantum containment fields can be ... influenced by external resonance patterns. One of the Valdorian technical advisors studied the display with growing alarm. You are suggesting some form of quantum cascade weapon. Such technology would be beyond the capabilities of most spacefaring species. Commander Torres nodded gravely. That's what the Krillians thought as well. They assumed that a species as young as humanity couldn't possibly have developed such advanced defensive capabilities. They were partially correct. We hadn't developed quantum cascade weapons. Sarah stood and walked to the viewport, where both fleets were visible in the distance. The Valdorian ships maintained their encirclement pattern, confident in their tactical superiority, while the smaller human fleet held its position with apparent calm. What we had developed was something much more elegant and much more dangerous. We call it the Harmony Protocol. The holographic display changed to show wave patterns and mathematical equations that pulsed with an almost hypnotic rhythm. Dr. Park continued the explanation while Sarah remained at the window. Instead of trying to disrupt quantum containment fields, the Harmony Protocol synchronizes them. Every ship within range begins to resonate at the same quantum frequency, creating a network effect that amplifies exponentially. Emperor Thrax's voice carried a note of skepticism. And what practical effect does this synchronization achieve? Sarah turned back to face the alien delegation, and her smile had returned to its original warmth. It makes every ship in the affected area share the same vulnerability. When one quantum containment field fails, the cascade effect spreads instantly to every synchronized system within light minutes of the initial failure. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft humming of the station's life support systems. The Valdorian advisors exchanged glances that clearly indicated they were beginning to understand the implications of what they were being told. If the humans possessed the ability to cause synchronized cascade failures across entire fleets, then numerical superiority became meaningless. In fact, it became a liability. Commander Torres reactivated her tactical display, showing the aftermath of the Krillian encounter. 800 ships became 800 synchronized quantum containment failures in approximately 6 seconds. The energy release was visible from 3 star systems away. You committed genocide one of the Valdorian guards stated flatly. Sarah's expression became more serious. We tried to prevent it. Admiral Harrison sent for separate warnings, explaining that attacking human colonies would result in the complete destruction of their fleet. The Krillian commander thought we were bluffing. He was wrong. Dr. Park looked down at his tablet with what might have been regret or sadness. The loss of life was tragic and unnecessary. Over 3 million Krillians died because their leaders couldn't conceive of a scenario where their superior numbers would become a disadvantage. We learned from that experience as well. Emperor Thrax had been silent throughout this explanation, but now he spoke with a voice that carried less confidence than when the meeting had begun. If you possess such devastating capabilities, why haven't you used them already? My fleet has been in your space for over 2 hours, well within range of these quantum weapons. Sarah returned to her seat and leaned forward slightly, her hands folded on the table. Because, Your Majesty, we learned something important from the Krillian incident. Having the power to destroy entire civilizations also gives us the responsibility to use that power wisely. Simply eliminating everyone who threatens us would eventually make us the most feared and hated species in the galaxy. Commander Torres nodded and gestured toward the display showing both fleets. More importantly, destroying your fleet would solve our immediate problem but create much larger ones. The Valdorian Empire would send investigation fleets, then revenge fleets, then entire armadas. The cycle of violence would continue until one of our species was extinct. Dr. Park looked up from his tablet with an expression of genuine interest. But that's not why we invited you here. We studied your species' history before this meeting, and we discovered something fascinating. The Valdorian Empire has never actually preferred conquest over cooperation when given viable alternatives. This statement clearly surprised the alien delegation. Emperor Thrax's 6 eyes focused intently on the human scientist. Explain what you mean. The holographic display changed to show historical data about Valdorian expansion patterns. In every case where the Empire encountered a species willing and able to provide valuable resources through trade rather than conquest, you chose peaceful cooperation. The problem is that most species either couldn't offer anything you needed, or they were too frightened to negotiate effectively. Sarah's smile returned as she saw understanding beginning to dawn in the Emperor's expression. We believe that the Valdorian Empire and humanity have much to offer each other through partnership, rather than conquest. Your manufacturing capabilities combined with our technological innovations could benefit both species tremendously. Commander Torres activated a new display showing theoretical designs and technical specifications. For example, human quantum resonance technology combined with Valdorian engineering could produce faster-than-light drives that are 50% more efficient than anything currently in use. Your empire's expansion could continue, but through mutual cooperation rather than military conquest. Emperor Thrax studied the displayed information carefully, consulting with his advisors in low voices. Finally, he looked back at Sarah with an expression that mixed respect with wariness. You offer partnership, but you threaten destruction in the same conversation. How do we know this is not simply conquest by other means? Sarah stood and walked back to the viewport, looking out at the massive alien fleet that still surrounded her small force. Because, Your Majesty, if we wanted to conquer your empire, we would have started by destroying your fleet when it first arrived. The fact that you're still alive and your ships are still intact demonstrates that we prefer cooperation to conquest. She turned back to face the alien emperor, and her smile had become something that conveyed both warmth and absolute confidence. The choice is yours, Emperor Thrax. You can order your fleet to attack us, and we will demonstrate why that strategy failed so catastrophically for the Krillians. Or you can recognize that humanity is offering you something much more valuable than a few colony worlds. And what exactly are you offering? The Emperor asked quietly. Partnership, Sarah replied simply. Trade agreements that benefit both. Our species, shared technology that makes us both stronger, access to human innovations that could revolutionize your empire's capabilities, and most importantly, the knowledge that the Valdorian Empire was wise enough to choose cooperation over conquest when it truly mattered. The room fell silent again as Emperor Thrax considered his options. Sarah could see the calculation happening in his alien features as he weighed the risks of continued aggression against the potential benefits of cooperation. His advisors were clearly divided, with some favoring caution and others pushing for military action. Finally, the Emperor spoke in a voice that carried the weight of a decision that would affect billions of beings across hundreds of star systems. Human Commander, your species is either remarkably wise or remarkably dangerous, perhaps both. I will order my fleet to stand down while we explore these possibilities you speak of. Sarah's smile brightened like the sun emerging from behind clouds. Thank you, Your Majesty. I believe this is the beginning of a very profitable relationship for both our peoples. As the diplomatic teams began discussing the practical details of their new partnership, Sarah reflected on how a simple smile had changed the course of galactic history. Sometimes the greatest strength was not in the weapons you possessed, but in the wisdom to know when not to use them. And sometimes the most powerful message you could send to a potential enemy was to treat them as a potential friend instead. The smile that had confused and concerned the Valdorian Empire was not a mask or a deception. It was the genuine expression of a species that had learned to find opportunity in crisis and hope in the face of overwhelming odds. It was the smile of humanity, and it would be remembered throughout the galaxy as the moment when two great civilizations chose cooperation over conquest. In the years that followed, historians would mark this meeting as the turning point when the Valdorian Empire transformed from a force of conquest to a beacon of cooperation, leading a new age of peaceful expansion and mutual prosperity among the stars. And at the center of that transformation was a human commander who understood that sometimes the most powerful weapon is an outstretched hand and a genuine smile. Asterisk.